Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you to the Committee of Adjustment hearing for Panel 2, Suburban. We are a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances and zoning requirements and consent to sever lands. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centerpoint Drive. We are also enable remote participation by video conferencing for registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public. My name is George Barrett. I'll be chairing today's hearings, and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Heather McLean, Juliana Wright, and Jay Baltz. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed their planning reports and written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions related to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirement, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or need to swear an oath to affirm an oath today that they fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we would have to adjourn the meeting and postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions for the applicant and city staff, city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have the opportunity to make final comments in reply. Please address your comments to me as chair, starting with your name and spelling if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In any case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send official written decisions and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure that we'll be following today? All right, then we have several applications to hear today, but first we need to deal with some preliminary and procedural matters. Are there any declarations of interest to panel members? No. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of September 5th and September 10th. Are the minutes confirmed or? Yes, push your hand up, please. Thank you. The committee has received 2 adjournment requests, and which we'll hear first. So we would like to start with item 2, 1918 Arizona. Mr. Eckert, would you please like to come to the front if you're here, or are you online?
Mr. Chair, we don't currently see the agent online.
Okay, thank you. The staff have asked for an adjournment request. Yes.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I believe city planning staff have requested an adjournment.
Yes. So that is there. Oh, yes, city planner, could you please?
Yeah, so in this case, the applicant had applied for the minor variance of a rear yard setback to reduce the rear yard setback. However, had just missed that they also require a variance to reduce the rear yard area. And so they're gonna, they're aware, haven't communicated with him this week, but they are aware and they are ready to come back to committee with the second variance as well.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, committee staff is aware that the applicant has already filed materials for recirculation of this application. So I think an adjournment sine die was the expectation.
So on the adjournment, sine die? In favor? Please raise your hand. Thank you. The second adjournment request is 3150, 3160, and 3170 Hawthorne. Item 7 in your agenda. Yes. And Mr. Thompson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Adam Thompson with Novatech,
Thank you.
240 Michael Copeland. We've had a couple of discussions with the staff planner and believe that further discussions, particularly bringing in engineering into the matter, will help satisfy the city's concerns. We're hoping that we can adjourn this for the 2 weeks to the October 31st hearing.
Staff, can you confirm the discussions?
Correct. We did have a discussion. I think we have a preliminary meeting set up on Friday to discuss those engineering concerns, servicing concerns. And if all goes well, we'd be willing to prepare a recommendation for the next public hearing if there's availability.
Okay. So on the matter, adjourning the item to October 31st, all in favor? It'll be on October 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next item we'll be dealing with is item 4 on the agenda, which is 17 Psy. Ms. Petrie, are you here today or online? Staff have no concerns with this application, and that being said, we would like to fast track this. So all in favor of the application?
Should we step it down to wait for the applicant?
Is the applicant?
Sorry, oops.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm right here. Sorry
Oh.
about that. It took a minute for everything to plug in. Yes, I would really like to request all the staff to please approve our minor variance request for the addition of a sunroom in the rear yard with the rear yard setback to be 5.71 meters.
thank you. Yes, your name, please.
Shivani Kapre, I'm the applicant for 17 SAI Crescent.
Okay. Could you spell that, please? Your last name?
My last name, KHAPARE.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the item is going to be fast tracked. Planning, do you have any comment on the application?
No, we reviewed it against the intent of the zoning bylaw, the official plan, and we were comfortable with it or satisfied that it met the 4 tests.
Thank you. So-
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
It's tied to plans, as a condition to tie it to plans. or not?
Yes, there are standard conditions, subject to the location and size of the proposed construction being in accordance with the plans filed and as stamped on September 22nd, 2023. All right, thank you. On the matter, carried. Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
The next item for business is number one, item number one, the consent application and minor variance for 1469 Portal Street. Mr. Would Jill McDonald be here, please? Thank you. Oh, online, thank you.
Go ahead. Yes, good afternoon, Chair. My name is Jill McDonald. I'm a planner of WSP 2611 Queensview Drive, and I'm a co-agent for the applications for 1469 Portal Street.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of committee. My name is Nadia DeSanti. I'm a practice lead with WSP as well.
With regards to this application, do you have any planning has no concerns? Planning, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have some back and forth with the applicant since it was previously adjourned. Most of our concerns were addressed. We do not have any concerns and are satisfied with the minor variances as well as the consent.
Okay, thank you. To the applicant, do you agree with conditions outlined in the report?
Mr. Chair, yes, we're fully in agreement with all the conditions.
Thank you. So, is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Please come forward.
Thank you. Hi, why does planning have no concerns? There's been letters written in. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Barbara Till. I live at 1447 Portal Street. I understand the neighbor at 1453 Portal Street has written into the committee. Do you announce what their concerns are here before I announce mine, or how does that work? I'm assuming it's an accumulation of the neighbors who are concerned.
Yes, I got in my head of myself, I think. Apologize for that. I'd like the applicant to make a brief presentation on this item, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the coordinator could share our presentation online, please. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you and good afternoon, Chair, members of committee. I'm going to deliver a short presentation on the combined consent and minor variance applications for 1469 Portal Street. Next slide, please. Okay, so the site is located in the Alta Vista neighborhood in Ottawa, shown with the yellow star. It's located southeast of the intersection of Cavendish Road and Portal Street. Existing on the site is a single detached dwelling. The site is a corner lot. Next slide, please. So on this slide is a proposed site plan. The site is proposed to be severed into 2 lots for residential purposes. On the right is the proposed 1459 Portal Street, the retained lands, proposed as a 2-story single detached dwelling. 1469 we are referring to as the retained lands, and existing is that 1.5-story dwelling. Next slide, please. A tree information report was prepared by Dendron Forestry, and that was included with our submission to the Committee of Adjustment. So out of the 15 existing trees on site, 5 are recommended for removal as they conflict with the proposed building envelope for the detached dwelling on the severed lands. 7 new compensation trees we planted around the site, and this includes 3 trees along Portal Street and 4 new trees in the rear yard of the retained lands. Next slide, please. So here are the proposed elevations of the new dwelling on the severed lands. So this on the top front elevation north, this is from Portal Street, on the bottom south elevation at the rear. Next slide, please. And then elevations from east to west. Next slide, please. This shows a proposed dwelling in relation to the existing surrounding context. So the existing dwellings on the right and the proposed dwelling on the severed lands is shown at the center. Next slide, please. In terms of the policy regulatory framework, the site is part of the Outer Urban Transect in the City of Ottawa official plan. It's designated as a neighborhood and located within the Alta Vista, Fairview Heights, Riverview Park secondary plan area. For its current zoning, it is zoned as residential first density subzone GG. Next slide, please. So the requested primary and secondary consents have been made as shown on the left. Again, the retained lands in red, 1469 Portal Street, and on the right in blue, severed lands, 1459 Portal Street. Next slide, please. So the variances, several variances have been requested to facilitate the consent to sever applications and proposed development. So 4 of these are for the severed lands, and these are related to reduced lot width, reduced lot area, and a reduced front yard, as well as an increased permitted projection of the front yard for a canopy. And for the retained lands, a reduced interior side yard as a result of the severance, proposed severance. Next slide, please. So for applications for consent, there's a number of criteria that we're required to meet under the Planning Act. I won't go into detail on all of these in the interest of time, but at a high level, the proposed consents will enable residential development within a settlement area. It will encourage intensification in an existing neighborhood that will utilize land, existing infrastructure efficiently. It will also contribute to a range of housing options in the city that will not result in negative social health or economic impacts. Next slide. The criteria is continued on this slide. It is our professional planning opinion that the proposed detached dwelling on the severed lands maintains the function of the site and around the surrounding neighborhood. Next slide, please. With respect to the proposed lot areas and dimensions, the retained lands meet the minimum lot area and width per the zoning bylaw, and the minor variance applications are for lot area and lot width for the separate lands. Next slide, please. There are no lands proposed to be dedicated for public purposes. No easements and site plan control will not be required under the City of Ottawa site plan control bylaw. Next slide, please. For the 4 tests for Planning Act for minor variance. We're of the opinion that the proposed applications meet 4 tests. The variances are minor in that they permit a reduction in lot area, width, and front yard to accommodate the building footprint of the detached dwelling on the severed lands. The proposed variance for reduction in interior side yard for retained lands is minor, as it's required to bring retained lands into compliance as a result of the proposed severance. The existing vehicle access will be maintained from Cavendish Road, and a new access will be added from Portal Street. So it is our opinion that these do not result in an undesirable, incompatible development. Next slide, please. Our variance is desirable for the appropriate development of neighborhood in question. A neighborhood lot analysis was prepared and submitted of our applications, and it concluded that there are approximately 7 other residential properties in the immediate vicinity of the site that have similar smaller lot areas and lot widths that are similar to what we are proposing for our applications. The proposed development will maintain the residential use of the lands in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. With respect to the general form of the detached dwelling on the severed lands, the proposed development complies with the remainder of the provisions under the zoning bylaw for R1GG. The purpose of the R1 zone is to restrict building form to detached dwellings in existing neighborhoods. And it is our opinion that the proposed variances maintain the existing character of the dwelling, which is at a scale that's compatible with the surrounding area. Next slide, please. With respect to the official plan, as I mentioned before, the site is designated as a neighborhood where low-rise development up to 4 stories is encouraged. So the proposed dwelling on the severed lands will be 2 stories. The existing neighborhood around 1469 Portal is primarily comprised of 1 to 2 story residential detached dwellings. And the variance is being requested. We are of opinion that this supports the city's goals in increasing housing options and form in the city. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Just one for you, Mr. Chair. There's a secondary plan that covers this area. Does that plan say anything about the character of the front yard space and how much green space there should be and the character of the trees or anything that isn't covered here? I'm looking specifically to the test on the intent of the official plan.
Sure.
Yes, sorry. For you, Mr. Chair, yes, the secondary plan does speak to front yards in this area and street trees. We did review the policy secondary plan, included that for our plan rationale at a high level. It encourages retention of trees. We are proposing compensation trees to be planted as 5 trees will be removed as a result of the proposed development.
And if I may add, Mr. Chair, the secondary plan does permit residential uses. So the proposed use is in conformity with the secondary plan.
Thank you.
May I also make just a brief comment that there are requirements for what percentage of the front yard needs to be open green space, and it all needs to be on one side of the driveway, and we more than meet that requirement. Mr. Chair, sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Now we'll hear from members of the public. Mrs. Till, Barbara Till. That's your address as well, please.
Sure, it's 1447 Portal Street.
Thank you.
As far as that presentation went, was that available to us? Like the neighbors, I did get a letter about the 4 minor variances. or 5 minor variances on the second letter, but I did not receive that presentation.
No,
Is that not to be available to me? Because I have a couple of questions about it.
you can ask some questions
Sure.
regarding the
Sure.
presentation. Yes.
Sure. You mentioned gentle intensification, I believe. And also, just before item number 3, there was something about, well, again, 4 stories versus 2 stories. I didn't quite understand that. My area is zoned for 4 stories.
Through you to staff, can you address that question, please?
1 second here. I'm just pulling up the zoning map. So the area is not zoned for 4 stories. It is residential 1 GG. Permitted permitted building height is 8 meters. I believe they're proposing 7.5 at the average grade.
Yeah, 7.5 meters without a sloped roof is a very big building. I don't have any objection to severing the land. I don't have any objection to the lot size. Are the variances, do they have to be complete? Can we allow some and not others? All sorts of questions that I have and I don't have the answer to, but I just find this anything but minor. The lot size is roughly 75% of what the lot size should be. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the size of the building that they want to put on the lot. They've drawn the diagram I got has a red line drawn at all the setbacks, and this building literally covers the red lines. There has been buildings in the past that have gone over, and you have no way of taking them back. So it seems to me they should be well within the setbacks, not asking to go over the setbacks. There's literally no house on the street on a smaller lot that is bigger than 2,500 square feet. That's it. I understand this house to be something like 4,000 square feet. It's big house. It's a very big house. And so that's where all my objections come in. Don't think you take out 70-year-old trees, plant a couple of seedlings and say, here, we replace them. I really don't think you do that.
No.
The privacy of the immediate neighbor is incredibly affected, as is the privacy of the existing home, which you're not asking, you're actually asking for the setback to be closer to that house when there's these big windows on it. If somebody else lived there, they would be objecting to that.
Okay, we'll just speak to the variances that are here.
Okay, yeah, that's one of them.
Yes.
That is one of them.
Yes.
So if you do not allow that variance, then the new lot becomes 15 meters instead of 15.7. The multiplication in the graph on the second page of the application for all the lot width, the lot depth, and the areas, the multiplication doesn't add up. So I'm just wondering, is that because it's an average? I don't know. So there's a lot of indiscrepancies.
Yeah.
And if I could just say that what I object to mostly is that this house does not fit into the existing area at all.
Thank you.
I believe in the presentation, they said that it suits the area and it just doesn't. So there's the size of the property. I think the trees should stay, no matter what, those trees should stay. And the house should be built well within that distance from the trees such that they're not destroyed in the process. And I guess I'm running out of time, but yes. I did send a letter, so you do have those comments to take into consideration.
Yes, we do have your comments on file.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for attending. The next speaker, please. Jean-Sébastien Chassé and Martin Lahoul. Is it online?
They don't appear to be online, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Last word goes to the applicant. Can you speak to these comments, please?
Yes, I'll try to be brief. The next door neighbors who you received a letter from and you were just looking for, they moved into the property in August, and they said it was a shock to find out that there was something happening next door. I had approached the previous owners last November and explicitly stated there would be an application to build a house on this property. Unfortunately, they didn't inform the new purchasers that this would be happening. So they did get a shock, but they do have an extensive backyard of their own, which is very heavily treed. And it's unfortunate they feel they need to rely on my lot to meet their need for trees and amenity space, but it's not theirs. I posted a large sign on the property with an illustration of the site plan and the proposed house. And if we just skip forward in the presentation, another slide, I had originally proposed a two-story house plus a basement garage. And I met with Ms. Till and other neighbors who said the house was too big and not in keeping. And we had to have an adjournment, and for technical reasons, and I took about redesigning the house. This is the original design. It was 2 stories plus garage. So it appeared to be 3 stories from the street. And I took to heart their comments that they felt it was too big. I modified the design. Next slide, please. Another slide. Okay, I did look briefly at trying to use a sloped roof, but next slide, please. I decided that rather than compete with the existing roofscape, that the house would feel more modest with a flat roof and a split level arrangement. So it just appears as 2 stories at the front and then slightly raised up 2 stories at the back. And it was my opinion that this would best serve the massing of the area. And there are many other houses in Alta Vista of the mid-century style which use flat roofs, although there's only one more modern house on this street which has a flat roof, and it is quite large. It's probably over 3,000 square feet. The other thing I did is I significantly reduced the area. The original design was over 4,000 square feet, and this is now closer to 3,000 square feet in area. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Ms. McLean? Mr. Baltz?
Yeah, am I the only one asking questions? On the one you just showed, which has disappeared now, unfortunately, the trees that are in the picture, those are all trees that remain, or is that superimposed on trees that are going to be
unfortunately, well, they can pull it up. I don't think that in cropping out the trees, we took out the couple of big ones right at the front left. They're still showing us sticking up behind, but it's impossible to build a house on this lot without taking out those trees because their roots succumb, the area of the roots would be more than half of the size of the lot,
Right.
So it's sad,
the trees
but
that are showing are actually not going.
2 of them in behind. The spruce tree that's on at the property line at the front, we're doing everything we can to keep that.
Mhm.
And there's another group of large mature trees at the back of the property, all of which are being kept.
And would those, this might be jumping ahead a little bit, but through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, would those screen the lot to the rear from overlook? Because there was some concern raised about overlooks in various directions.
Yeah, all of the existing vegetation on my property and the adjacent property to the south is a complete screen looking back. There's some concern that there might be a diagonal view to my next door neighbor to the east, and you're looking over a garage roof And we have no windows on that corner of the house or looking out on that side. And I just don't think there's going to be any opportunity to look into their private space in the back there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, pardon the interruption. We just received an email from the registered speakers that they didn't receive the invitation to the online meeting. So with apologies, we're sending that right now.
Okay.
They are listening. They should be receiving it by email momentarily.
Thank you. A question from Mrs. Wright, please.
More for planning and for the benefit of perhaps Ms. Till, what are the protections against building over the property line, over the setback line during construction? What happens if that happens?
Essentially, the building inspector would notice that it wasn't built as per plan, and the applicant would have to come back to committee to seek the variance to legalize that encroachment. So it would come back to committee to decide, and at that moment, if it's decided that it's not feasible, it doesn't meet the 4 tests, then they would have to take some other sort of precaution to remove the deficiency.
Thank you.
Excuse me just for 1 second. Back to you, the applicant, please.
Through Mr. Chair, I've been practicing architecture in the city of Ottawa for 40 years, and I've never built a building bigger than what was granted approval for. Thank you.
Did you have an additional comment?
Well, there are some townhouses that got built close to the post office at Industrial Road that were over the land. And
Please
there
speak
was-
to this application, yeah.
Fair enough, but
Yeah.
problems can arise. Sorry.
Thank you.
This applicant isn't immune to them.
Thank you. Okay. Is there someone online now?
Mr. Chair, yes, they do appear to be online.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good day, Mr. Chair. Is it my turn to speak?
Yes, it is.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you
Welcome.
for letting me in on such short notice. My name is Jean-Sébastien Chassé. I'm the direct neighbor to the applicant. And I would just like to comment. And my comment will be basically an analogy of going to park your car in a regular parking lot and going in the store and coming back, and then your car is squeezed between 2 other Humvees or Hummer, and then there's no space for you to even open your door. So that's kind of what this project makes me feel. And I will reflect back to Barbara Thiel's comment that I have no issues with the lot being severed. I have issues with putting something that is disproportionate on top of the severed lot, and being personally involved because of my location, this will have direct impact on our privacy. And I understand that this is not, my privacy is not a concern of the committee, but I would like that project to either have a better clarification on how the separation of land will be managed to mitigate that aspect. So I don't want to say more than that. This is my big concern, privacy being one thing, and the other thing being having something that's too big for the lot it's being put on. And that reminds me, in the applicant's presentation, they did a lot analysis saying that there were seven other lots of similar sizes than the one proposed in the area, which is true, but they compared the house to lot ratio. So I haven't done the math, but I would be 100% sure that there are no other house bigger than what is being proposed on any of those 7 lots. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the Mr. Baltz?
Just to keep keep up my pattern of asking questions. I'll come back to the privacy issue. So what overlook is there possible from the new building that is of concern? Mr. Chassé.
Mr. Chassé?
You're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. I wanted
Yeah.
to show you because if you put a two-story building right next to my house, right? I understand I don't have an ownership on that land, right? But what's going to happen is that right from the garage there up to the front yard will be a two-story building, and it will be. I mean, I understand this, and on that side of the house will be windows, right? And the clearance of 1.8 meter is from the little wall that's right there. So 1.8 meter after that, we'll start the flat two-story building. I mean, I'm sure it's a nice building, but I don't think it's being fitted on the proper lot because of the proximity to me, but because also of if you look at the overall neighborhood, I don't think it's appropriate. Again, I know I'm biased personally because I'm right next door. Obviously, other neighbors have concerns as well, which I'm sure weigh in the balance. But yeah, my concern personally is privacy, and having a more reasonably sized house on that severed lot, I would have no problem because, and yeah, I don't want to waste more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chassé. Any other questions? Back to the applicant for comment.
Mr. Chair, there's a very limited number of windows, a kitchen window and a bathroom window looking in that direction. Currently, every time Mr. Chassé comes out of his house, get in his car, gets a full view of my yard, and I don't mind that. But, you know, I would be entitled to put up a fence, and you know, these variances have nothing to do with the presence of the wall per se, and 1.8 meters from the property line. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we're going to
If
no, thank you. No, this decision will be reserved, so you won't hear the decision today, but you'll be all the speakers will be receiving a written submission of the decision in 10 days. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item will be item number 3, which is consent for severance and minor variance for 4 Huron Avenue. And Ms. Murray, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Murray, 45 Spencer Street, Suite 101. I believe the property owner is also listening in via Zoom. So would you like me to introduce the project? Okay.
A presentation, please. Thank you. Sorry about that.
This application is for a consent to sever and 1 minor variance to allow for separate ownership of a long semi-detached unit The project or the house is already built. It was built in 2021 and occupied in 2022. There are 2 slides available, I think, with the coordinator. It just shows the reference plan. Did you want me to go through a more formal presentation?
No, I don't think it's necessary.
I can describe it briefly or answer any questions. It's basically
Good
for,
question about a condition, right?
Yes. Yes, there's a question about a condition, but if you just want to make your opening comments brief, that would be
yeah,
fine.
no, all I was going to say is so there's no variances associated with any of the performance standards in the R3T. It's simply related to the minimum lot width on the pole, the flagpole,
Mhm.
to 1.45. And the zoning that was in place actually at the time that the house was built originally was 1.5 meters at that time, and it's since been increased. So that's not the rationale for the variance, but that's just a fact too.
Yeah.
So I was conversing with Ms. Gilbert related to, we requested the removal of condition number 1 related to parkland dedication, and I didn't speak to her again today. We traded emails this morning about the date of the occupancy. So that's just something I wanted to ask staff. I know in the past that when a unit was already occupied, the cash in lieu of parkland was sometimes not required to be collected. So I guess it's the questions with staff on their interpretation of the bylaw.
Thank you. Jerica, can you speak to that matter, please?
Yes, thank you. For kind of context on this one, we are dealing with 2 parkland bylaws considering when this unit was built. So it was built in 2021. So when the building permit was issued, cash in lieu and parkland wasn't collected at that time. Staff's review of the current parkland dedication bylaw did put that recommendation for that condition 1 on the premise that we hadn't already collected cash in lieu. The condition does have an opening for the applicant to demonstrate whether or not payment has already been collected. Now, with speaking with the Parks Department and other planning staff on this matter, it does seem to be the case because of the transition between the 2009 Parks bylaw to the 2022 Parks bylaw, and then to add on top of that, changes made through Bill 23. There is potential, what the applicant is saying may have merit. I haven't exactly parsed out the policy context for it yet. I do believe that the committee has 2 options in this circumstance. They could either take the recommendation of the applicant to remove the condition entirely, or potentially amend the condition to speak to what it says now, but also allow a way out where basically it can be demonstrated that the lot qualifies for an exemption where they don't need to apply for parkland dedication. That being said, given the case that we have before us, if the condition is removed, I don't think that would adversely affect kind of the community in the area or kind of the intentions that we're saying out by that, but that's my response to the removal of that condition. And my apologies, it's a lot of different policy changes that have happened very recently, and staff are still kind of getting up to speed and getting used to approach on how we take on kind of these transitionary cases. Because of course, if the semi was built after the Parks bylaw in 2022 was in effect, parkland fees would have been collecting at building permit stage, and we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Jerica. Any questions from our panel? Ms. McLean? Ms. Wright? Mr. Baltz? No? So with regards to the applicant, We'll be reserving the decision, and you'll hear within 10 days of the decision in writing.
Okay.
Okay.
With respect to condition 1, I think we would be open to including wording that just acknowledges the parkland dedication change, and we could discuss it after. I think the owner was not anticipating paying the parkland dedication fee when we received the conditions last week. It was a surprise, but he does understand and is open to discussing it with the city. So
okay,
if the condition could just reflect that, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is item number 5, which is the consent to subdivide the property into 2 separate parcels of land for 2 existing industrial buildings with 1 building on each parcel. The applicant indicates the parcels were previously separate and have merged, and this is for 1641 and 1655 Comstock Road. Is the applicant here?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I hope I'm visible and audible. Good
Yes, you
afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair, respected members. My name is Ralph Gritani. I'm with RGC Design Group, Urban Planners, Urban Designers, City of Toronto. And today we represent our clients, Madalena Holdings Limited, the owners of both 1641 and 1655 Comstock Road. The application for consent before the panel this afternoon has been carefully crafted over time with city planning officials in order to ensure that this technical application does ensure Planning Act compliance, specifically how sections 53 and 50 apply to the success of this planning exercise. I'd like to thank staff, both planning level and C of A, for direction, clarity, and discussion over the last months on this important matter. We've read through staff comments, reports, and received all notes from commenting authorities. We feel that it's imperative for the information for the panel to understand at this time that the owners of both lands do not intend to change the use nor apply for applications under building permits. So therefore, the buildings will remain intact in place as they originally were constructed. The sole purpose of this application is to apply for the consent in order to, what we deem in this world, unmerge the title for each lot back to its original composition prior to the merge. Our presentation documents, cover letters, correspondence does speak to the intent of the application with backup support, reference plans, etc. Essentially, I would define this application as one of need and not one of greed. And the owners wish essentially to organize their holdcos for future estate planning. Mr. Chair, respected members, thank you for this opportunity today to present. And we respectfully seek your application, support of this application. And if the panel does deem this to be supportive, we would respectfully add that the consent application follow form number 2. Thank you so much. Any questions? I'm here.
Are there any questions from the committee? There are no questions from the committee, and staff planning staff have no concerns with the application. So we will be. Is there anyone else here to speak to the application in the audience or online? Yeah. Yes. To the agent, do you agree with the requested conditions in the report?
Yes. Once again, and we've heard it from the previous applicant and staff, the the comment, one condition, sorry, that applies to the cash in lieu for conveyance. Essentially, because we're not making any changes, we think that paragraph was added automatically, but we'd like to continue that discussion with staff to ensure that nobody overpays here, to put it subtly. We hope that this project will not be subject to further cash in lieu for the properties or for the new lot that we're creating.
Thank you. Just to planning staff, would you like to make comment on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was thinking the same thing as following the previous applications. So I obviously on the floor here, I don't have time to look into it, but I might suggest that we just amend the condition to state that the owners provide evidence that payment has been made, et cetera, or that they are exempt from the requirement to provide cash in lieu. And that way they're covered in either way, in either case. And I'll look into it further with the parks planners.
Thank you. Any further questions? We'll just reserve the item and you'll be notified of the decision in 10 days by writing, in writing.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for hearing us. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Item 6 on our agenda, which is the consent to sever and a property into 4 parcels of land to create long semi-detached dwellings on the property of 429 Ancaster Avenue. Mr. Robinson, are you here?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Have a presentation, please.
Yes, there is one that if the coordinator could put up, that would be greatly appreciated. Have Miss Ursula Malins of Soloway Right is also here to my right, to your left, and behind me is the applicant, Mr. Broom. Okay, so if the coordinator could put up the presentation materials, appreciate it. So the applications before you today are 429 Ancaster Avenue. As you indicated, they are for both severance applications and minor variances in order to create a total of 4 lots, and on each lot would be 1 semi-detached building. Next slide, please. This is where the property is. It's in the Wood Park community. So to the east, which is on the right-hand side, is Woodruff. To the south, about 250 meters, is Carling Avenue. The property is outlined in purple. It has approximately 950 square meters, or in excess of 10,000 square feet of vacant land behind the existing home that is on the property, which is a 2-story single-family home. The zoning on the subject property is R2F, which does permit semi-detached units. Lands to the east that front onto Woodruff are in an R4D zone, and then further to the east is the Carlingwood Shopping Center. And the fact that the parcel has got so much vacant land is the sort of impetus for severing it into 4 parcels of land. Next slide, please. This is the front view of the property. So as you can see, it's a 2-story home with a rather large, wide driveway and 1 tree in the front yard. Next slide, please. This is a look on the north side, looking towards the property itself. As you can see, there is quite a slope, and that slope will be modified so that it's more suitable for a home, one of the 4 buildings on the property. Next slide, please. This is a view in the rear yard looking to the north. So you can see there's a large area for these new buildings to be located. Next slide, please. Two other views. The one on the left is the rear yard looking to the east, And then the image on the right is in the rear yard. It shows a tree in the corner that is to remain, and in order to allow that tree to remain, it triggers two of the variances for lot 4 as we are shifting the building on lot 4 further to the east and having a very slight reduction in the rear yard area and the rear yard setback. Next slide, please. This is in purple is the outline of the survey plan of the existing property. You can see the home is almost lot line to lot line along the front. And as you can see, the property does widen out once you get beyond the house. I believe it's 37 meters in width along the east property line. Next slide, please. This is the site plan. So the plan has got 4 buildings on it. Each of them is a long semi that would contain 2 units. So there are 3 that are aligned one behind the other along the north side of the property. And then in the southeast corner of the property, there is another building. So they're shown as built lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and units 1 through 8. As well, lot 1, which is the one closest to Ancaster Avenue, is proposed to have basement secondary dwelling units, which are permitted as of right. Next slide, please. These are views looking to the northeast. There's details showing what the proposed homes would look like, and then the building that is does not have the level of detail on it that is on the right-hand side is an adjacent property, so we've not shown much detail there, but that is not part of the application. Next slide, please. View from the rear, and it shows some of the new tree planting that is being proposed by the applicant along the east property line. Next slide, please. And this is, I guess, the crux of the variances. So going from on the right-hand side, we're asking for reduced parking space dimensions on 3 of the 4 lots. We do have the room so that there is an ability to turn in and out. But we're having reduced parking, primarily parking space length set variances, so that there's still some suitable amenity area in each of the lots. The area shown as an overlay in purple is the shared driveway for this development. And the zoning only allows a shared driveway to be a maximum of 2 lots. And we're asking for it to be for 4 lots. The width of it matches the streetscape character analysis dimensions. The next one is we're asking for a reduced lot width on 3 of the 4 lots, and also reduced lot frontage. They are separate calculations, but they will be basically the same. And those are for within the driveway. There is a narrow link to Ancaster Avenue. The shared servicing will go through that area, and those lot widths and lot frontages are a reduced amount. But once you get to the actual lot itself, the lots widen out so that they would be in conformity with the 10-meter wide requirement for this area for a semi. As well, there's some very complicated calculations for lot depth, which then triggers rear yard setback definitions. That applies to lots 2, 3, and 4. You have to take the lot depth from the frontage on Ancaster all the way to the rear lot line of each lot. And then I believe it's 30% calculation. We have set the rear yard setbacks at 6 meters. That is what would be compliant on the lot closest to Ancaster, and we've replicated that on the other lots, but it does trigger rear yard setback variances for lots 2, 3, and 4. There is a reduced rear yard area requirement on lot 4, and that is because on lot 4 in the bottom left-hand corner of lot 4, there is an existing mature tree on the property that we would like to retain. And due to critical root zone issues, we need to shift the building on lot 4, which is shown as units 7 and 8, slightly to the east, and then have a reduced rear yard area. It's only, I think, about a 10% reduction. We are proposing to plant trees along the east property line. And then by the strictest interpretation of the bylaw, a portion of the parking spaces for lots 3 and the 2 parking spaces for lots 4 are considered to be front yard parking. I will say that if you were standing on Ancaster, it's a distance of about 35 to 40 meters to the parking space that's on lot 3 and lot 4, and you wouldn't even see the parking spaces for lot 4 from Ancaster because there's buildings in the way and it's tucked in behind, and you would only see a small portion of the parking spaces on lot 3, and they are 35 to 40 meters away. So that's not the sort of traditional front yard parking variances that you see before the committee. Next slide, please. This is a drawing showing the draft 4R plan, and the lots are shown in red. And then the way that the lot depth calculations are done are shown in blue dashed lines. As you can see, for example, there is a lot 4, which is at the bottom right, which is shown as part 7. It has a very long lot depth calculation, and it actually goes across the property that is to the south of 429 Ancaster, because it's a straight line distance between the front of the lot on Ancaster and the midpoint of the rear lot line. Next slide, please. So this is the presentation showing how the rights of way and easements would work. Okay, so parts 1, 2, and 9 are on lot 1, and part 9 is a servicing easement. Part 2 is part of the driveway, and it is in favor of parts 3 through 8. Part 3 is solely owned by lot 2. Part 4 is part of the driveway on lot 2 and is in favor of lots 1, 3, and 4. Part 5 is solely owned by lot 3. Part 6 is lot 3's driveway, and it is shared by the other lots. Lot 7 is wholly owned by lot 4, and part 8 is part of lot 4, but it is the driveway and turnaround on the driveway, and it is in favor of the other parts. So this was all indicated in the submission letter that was filed, and it shows up on the draft 4R plan. Next slide, please. Okay.
So I
Go ahead.
So I will now be just addressing the technical consent part of the application. Sorry, I am averse to microphones. So in regards to the consent part of this application, what we are seeking is consent to create 4 lots. It's a variation on the flag lot pattern that we see in many applications. But the establishment of the pattern of development here will provide opportunities to provide the missing middle housing we keep hearing about here in the city of Ottawa. A comment we need to address is we do not agree with the staff report specific to the fact that a PUD, planned unit development, would be a more appropriate form of development. It's the proponents a proponent is entitled to decide how they want to go forward with the development of their land. A PUD by definition is a parcel of land that contains more than one building on it. That's not what we're seeking. Clearly, we are here for the purpose of consents to create 4 lots. So each lot will have its own separate building through the use of one common driveway, which is a benefit in our submission because you're reducing, you're increasing the amount of amenity space, you're reducing the amount of non-permeable surfaces. We only have one driveway that will service these properties. A key consideration is the Planning Act, of course. 53 is what the consents are. We have to look at 51 sub 24 of the Planning Act, the criteria as to whether or not a consent is appropriate. In this case, a subdivision is not required. We've been advised by our engineer that the site can indeed be serviced. Each of the 4 lots can be separately serviced. There might be a requirement to add a fire hydrant so that there's an appropriate distance linkage to service the back lots, but we've been advised through the engineer, and he's had discussions with city engineering as well, that in principle, city engineering didn't have an issue, but of course, there's always the design details, which leads to a consideration of the conditions. So condition 2 does state that there's a joint use and common element agreement required. We agree to that condition. Suggests maybe a slight revision to this would be helpful, because we are asking that condition 3 be removed. So condition 3 is the one that says separate services to each lot. That's not what's going to be provided, but rather it will be the one pipe going down the driveway to service the rear lots, and then there'll be separate laterals going off of it. And it will be covered through the joint use and common elements agreement, that the maintenance of that will be provided. Also important to note that the driveway will be a heated driveway, so that there will be no snow removal obstacle associated with that, and that will also be covered by the common and joint use agreement. Just a general comment about this type of development. It's more and more complex to provide infill development here in the city of Ottawa. We are seeing in all of our applications the complexities of this, and when we look to the minor variances that are sought, there is in our submission no undue impact, adverse impact on the neighbors. No zero setbacks are being sought. The buildings will be set back from the existing lot lines. It's just due to the unique configuration of the lots that the variances are indeed required. Just want to address some of the comments that were received from the public: loss of sunlight, perceived loss of property value, loss of privacy comments. Not to diminish the impact that these people feel this will have on them. Those are all not valid planning reasons on which an application should be refused. Its Planning Act does state what we need to consider, as I said, in 5124, which we feel all of those tests have indeed been satisfied by this, and which is why the consent should be granted. Additionally, as I said, the complexity of this project can easily be addressed through the joint use common elements agreement that we're willing to enter into. The lot pattern created will permit the creation of 8 additional units, which is going to provide more ground-oriented housing, which is required here in the city. So subject to revising the conditions as requested, we're asking that the committee grant the consents and the minor variances.
Thank you.
And now the proponent would just like to make his comments, please.
Okay, thank you. That's Mr. Brum. Thank you.
And if the coordinator could go back to the slide that was on the screen when I believe I finished. That's the one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. We appreciate this opportunity and your time to present this innovative rental project. My presentation may include some topics that have probably never been discussed at Committee of Adjustment before. It all makes sense in connection with how we arrived at this site plan. It didn't just happen because we were trying to pack the site with property. So this slide is a smaller, about 1,550 square feet each, long semi-detached project. It's across the street from the subject site. These were built to demonstrate energy and space efficient homes for the future of Ottawa. Each yard in a long semi, each of these houses has a private backyard space, and they are energy efficient enough that I have yet to turn on my heating system. It is understood Wood Park community is the only neighborhood in Ottawa with 2 LRT stations, and hence it's going to be subject to a lot of development pressure. The property across the street has over 10,400 square feet vacant in the backyard, with amenities, with a vibrant neighborhood and transit nearby. It is suitable for intensification. We agree with Councillor Kavanaugh that the community needs starter homes for young families as opposed to more large, typical and expensive homes. Community Association, of which I'm a member, requested that any proposal respect the context of the neighborhood without rezoning. This is understandable given years of LRT disruptions in the neighborhood. This is where it goes a little aside. We've gotten through the COVID-19 crisis. We have another crisis on our hands. When I go to the pharmacy, I look on the wall and here's a brochure that tells me how to prevent suicide amongst seniors. The fourth leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds right now is suicide. The leading cause of death for 13 and 14-year-olds is suicide. Our bylaws are based on isolation, not on association. We can blame social media, we can blame technology, but we also have to blame architects and planners. And I've been an architect for 45 years. I'm at fault as well. Suburban bylaws based on isolation put people from a house box with a large empty front lawn into a garage box, into a car box. They drive in and out of the neighborhood and often never associate with their neighbors. We build apartment buildings which isolate tenants and occupants behind long corridors in numbered boxes. They get into an elevator box, they go in and out of the building without interaction. Isolation needs to be replaced with belonging, both in our buildings and in our bylaws. Co-housing, which is multiple generations in a setting designed for social interaction, offers a successful community model which has informed every decision in the development of this site plan. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay. The staff suggestion was that we build 2 units semi-detached facing Ancaster Avenue with a row of 6 townhouses behind off of a common driveway. We did not feel this was appropriate for the neighborhood or for the site. This box-to-box planning would again isolate people and also present a wall of buildings to the townhouse neighbors to our east, and that would be on the right-hand side of the site plan, and would also require rezoning. In the current site plan before you, interaction is encouraged with buildings located closer together, several facing front doors, inherent supervision of landscape play areas, and a single-lane 3-meter wide heated driveway, providing a central spine amenity space for activities like road hockey, jumping rope, chalk drawing, basketball. We're turning a driveway into an asset and amenity space. And it also happens to serve 8 undersized parking spaces. Parking is not required in the bylaw, but is included to address neighbors' comments about potential on-street parking. A nearby car sharing option is also being considered because this is a walkable community. Putting accommodation into separate 2-story buildings maximizes green space, permits cross breezes and sunlight penetration, fits under the existing tree canopy, and is compatible in scale with the surrounding homes. The building on the lot 3, which is the top right corner, was shifted towards the west front boundary to provide additional privacy vegetation for our townhouse neighbors to the east. The building on lot 4, which is the bottom right, as Paul has mentioned, we positioned it as far away as possible from the black walnut, which is a specimen tree in the lower left corner, while still being able to provide privacy vegetation along the east property line. These smaller starter homes, they will be 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom in about 1,200 square feet, will allow new families to experience this great neighborhood, as well as allow existing residents to downsize and stay in their community. This will free up larger homes for larger families. We've added 2 1-bedroom basement units to test that rental market. Staff have also mentioned the slope that Paul pointed out in the front yard. Staff has requested that be removed, and the grade matches the adjacent properties, which we've agreed to. So in summary, this application is a result of extensive consultation with professionals and surrounding neighbors and the local councillor and the community association. I am a resident of this community. This is a made in Wood Park solution for Wood Park. Staff are recommending refusal. I would invite collaboration to bring this innovative housing model to Wood Park. Even if we were to rezone and have a plan of subdivision or condominium, consent applications to this committee would still be necessary to accommodate the required investor model. The increased costs and time delays for rezoning and other approvals would render rental housing unfeasible. Minor variances are not required for lot area, side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, building height, or soft landscaped area. We have fulfilled our promise to provide ground-oriented rental housing while contributing to the community within the R2F zone and feasible timeframes. Some want the property left vacant. They have other ways of saying it, but essentially they want the property left vacant, while others feel that what is presented is an innovative contextual solution to the ongoing housing crisis while addressing isolation issues. Councillor Kavanagh has deemed the final product the gentle intensification that we need. We hope the committee agrees. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Now I'd like to call on planning staff for a presentation, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, staff doesn't have a presentation per se, but we would like to say that staff recognizes that intensification is possible on the site. The department believes that the proper mechanisms are not minor variances and consents, but rather go through rezoning of the site to accommodate and planned unit development, and as well as to go to plan a condominium for the common elements that would result in having shared services. The concerns of having easements on the services is that this is resulting in 4 individual owned lots over infrastructure, and if there are potential JUMA expiracies or they need to be over the shared infrastructure and there's no contingency, those are the main reasons. If there was a shared common elements condominium on it, then the owners would share all of the services on that land instead of individual smaller portions where the services would be. As reiterated, again, staff recommends the refusal not to say that there cannot be development on this side. It's to say that the proper mechanism, according to staff's opinion, is to go through rezoning for a planned unit development.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant or staff at this time?
Thank you for the applicants. I'm going to list 3 questions or concerns. Just can you confirm the width of the driveway? Can you address the criteria in the consents for the size and shape of lot dimensions? And I wonder from city planning or perhaps from the applicant whether this would be subject to site plan control. Thank you.
Okay.
I could answer the first and third question. The first question is the driveway is 3 meters wide. And that was what the streetscape character analysis determined was the maximum width. And that is a suitable, there's only 8 parking spaces, and it's highly unlikely that you would ever have more than 1 car coming in or out at the same time. And there is a long view down the driveway. So it's highly unlikely that would be a conflict. And this property would not be subject to site plan approval.
And question 2? Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Slide 12, it does contain the draft plan. And so the lot frontages technically for lots 2, 3, and 4 is 0.76 meters because that's the driveway component. Lot 1, which is parts 1, 2, and 9, which fronts Ancaster, does indeed comply with the zoning bylaw. And so, like I said, it's a modification on the flag lots that we see when we have semis, but here we have 4 units.
If I may add as well, lots B, C, and D, once you get beyond the driveway component of those lots, they're all compliant in terms of lot width.
So one of the criteria under 5124 is the dimensions and shapes of the proposed lots. Are these replicated anywhere else in this R2 area within, let's say, the 60 meters or 100 meters or?
There is a similar property. It's a rectangular property, but has a house in the corner. But I believe it's all owned by one owner. Yeah, the only intent of severing is basically, should I ever decide to sell the property, I have an exit strategy, but it will be sold to basically one entity, which will be comprised of separate corporations. So there will always only be one party to deal with. It just.
Could you just clarify when you mentioned rental units?
Yes, this is the first time in my career as an architect that I've been able to build rentals.
But we're severing them to create four individual lots?
Four individual lots.
Would there be future severances to
No.
divide them?
No.
So
That's it.
they would be individually owned, but there would be a rental component? I'm just trying to.
No, they're not individually owned. These were never anticipated for private ownership. This is my attempt to provide rental housing in the community so that people can move into the community and people can stay in the community as they age. I've never been able to do this before in my career.
But you're going to sever them.
Sever them into 4 lots.
So you're going
Yes.
to need to sell them, convey them
No, they're
from
not
one
being sold.
owner to
They're not being sold.
create the lots.
Yeah.
Where am I?
But I have 3 investors and myself. Each one wants the assurance of being able to own a piece of property, but it's all going to be held under one corporation. So that way, as opposed to selling the whole project to one person who maybe couldn't afford it, the ability for 4 people to invest in it, which is what they've asked for. And then we maintain it as one property.
So I guess, Ms. Malins, there's going to be a deed for each lot.
It could be separately conveyable, but that would not be the intention. Separate lots will be created, correct? But we're not anticipating owners A, B, C, and D necessarily. There's a different corporate structure in which that can be organized. Mr. Broom is the proponent in this regard, and he's had discussions in regards to that.
But once a consent, always a consent. So
That is correct.
nothing would prevent the further conveyance of those lots once they're created.
That is,
That's correct, but there is no intention to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant?
From your experience, how long does it take to have a rezoning done, planned unit development produced, and condominium agreements done? From your experience, how long does that take?
Normally, the approvals don't take long, but what we're hearing these days is the system is broken. People are getting approved site plans and it's taking up to a year to get a written agreement from the legal department. So we anticipate 2 years or more.
and if I could just add, the difference between a planned unit development as opposed to the severances here would not change the lot pattern of the building layout. It's just a different mechanism, arguably more complicated, I would assert, rather than proceeding in the way in which we have. It wouldn't change how the site's going to be serviced. It wouldn't change how the buildings are located based on this particular lot configuration.
I believe there's agreement with the city on where we want to go. They don't agree with how we want to get there. I think that's this issue here. But as I said earlier, if it's the 2 years that we're sitting on this land, does not make sense as rentals. And the whole goal here is to provide rental housing.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm interested in, I'm struggling to see how it fits the intent of the zoning bylaw with respect to how long semis are defined there. And in all the discussion in the zoning bylaw and in the run up to creating the definition of the long semi several years ago, there's always a front unit that has wide frontage and a rear unit that has a flag and a pole. And the regulations are all created around that assumption. Here, everything except for your very front unit, the rear 3 lots, I think they're B, C, and D, are all flag. Correct? Because there's nothing that fronts on the street other than that 0.76 meters for those.
It's the one clause in the bylaw you cannot vary, as I understand it, is you have to have frontage on the street.
Yeah, correct.
You have to have a certain amount of frontage on the street. That is variable. Okay, I've gone through every clause in the bylaw. I've requested from staff numerous times throughout 2023, show me the clause that says these are not long semis. I have one unit behind the other. I have one door facing the front street on every building. I meet all the criteria. The whole discussion about flagged lots does not apply here. They are flag shaped lots. They are not flag lots because we are not severing within that lot. The long semi provisions, and I went through quite a bit of it on the building across the street. They've actually changed the bylaw now, so no one else can put long semis on a corner lot. If we were to sever within lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, or lot 4, then the flag lot provision would come into effect. It does not apply here right now.
So I'm of course going to ask staff the same thing when we get to that, but
I hope you can get an answer because I haven't been able to get one.
yeah, I mean, there are questions such as the front window facing the street when in fact front windows, well, I'm veering into opinion here and I don't want to do that. So how is the front window facing the street when in fact the front windows are facing the back of the next unit?
But they're also facing the street.
But the intent, it's staff who are to look at whether it complies to the bylaw or not. We are to look at whether it follows the intent of the bylaw and the official plan. And I'm just not sure that I want to be convinced that these follow the intent of the zoning bylaw in terms of whether the provisions such as the windows are visible and from the street, that type of thing, when in fact your rear 3 units don't do that.
Just if I may, so unit 1, which faces Ancaster, does indeed satisfy the bylaw clearly. But because of the configuration of the existing parcel of land, it doesn't fit neatly into the boxes of the current zoning bylaw. Hence, a creative solution was come up with. Significant time was spent by Mr. Broom to come up with a solution that would provide a suitable building typology. In the new official plan, we talk about building typologies, missing middles, etc. So what we have are 2-story semi-detached units, whether we call it a long semi or semi-detached, has its own technicalities. But what's being constructed are 2-story semi-detached units. That's the term I'm going to use because that's what they are, on a common driveway. And that, I would suggest, does indeed comply with the zoning for the neighborhood. We're not proposing a 4-story, a 6-story rentals or what have you, which technically could perhaps be accommodated on the site. Not that I've looked into it. Again, compatibility is one of the key tests. This is what is permitted in the zoning. Semis are permitted in the zoning. And that's the solution that's been proposed for this site. This site requires a creative solution, and that's what the proponent has proposed.
If I could just add, if these 4 units or 4 lots were to be aligned one next to each other all along Ancaster in a north-south alignment, we would have them. I don't think we'd have any variances. It's the shape of the lot and the fact that there is so much underutilized land in the rear of the property that it's a shame to just to remove the existing single-family home and to build a semi on it. So that, we're not, as Mr. Broom said, we're not asking for building height. We're not asking for front yard setback. We're not asking for side yard setback. The only reason we're asking for rear yard setback is because of the lot depth calculation, which is, and the bylaw, as we've all come to realize in this, it's a very blunt instrument that doesn't have a lot of flexibility. Thank you.
And we're not requesting rezoning. I made a promise not to request rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll turn to questioning staff. Do you have any questions from the panel? For staff? Mr. Blank? Mr. Wright? Mr. Bells?
Yeah, I'll ask my same question. So the question is with respect to the definitions of long semis and whether these with the 3 more rear lots, B, C, and D, comply in your opinion with the definite, well, not the definition, but with what long semis are envisioned to be in the zoning bylaw?
So you, Mr. Chair, staff had consulted with the zoning interpretations team with regards whether or not the other units, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8 would be considered long semis. And the interpretation was that they don't have frontage. They're not considered long semis. The only units that would be considered long semis is unit 1 and 2 that have frontage, and one is behind the other. The other ones are not considered long semis.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so what would they be considered?
I believe they wouldn't be considered as well as semis as well, because semis also need frontage on a street, and the definition of frontage in the bylaw is that something that abuts an improved public street. In this case, the way that they are configured, there is a private, or there's a driveway, so all of those units don't front the street.
Thank you.
Sorry, may I comment on that, or?
Not at this time. We're just gonna, I have one comment to staff regarding independent services. The applicant has said that there'll be laterals, one lateral laterals off one pipe. Excuse me. Was that discussed with planning staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe there were conversations, and as far as I know, there are perhaps what it's being proposed could be considered should this go through a plan of common elements condominium, because the concern here through going through Juma is that, as I stated before, there'll be individual ownership of pieces of land over infrastructure services that could potentially have conflicts farther down the road. If what is being proposed as just one common sewage system, pardon me, it could work through let's say a rezoning or a plan of condo, but we would look at the detailed designs to determine whether or not that it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now we'll hear from resident David Levesque. Is he here in person or remote? David Levesque. Yes, good afternoon. You're muted. Your mic's not on.
Sorry, I didn't intend to speak, hence my muted microphone. My comments were submitted written only. I am a member of the Wood Park Community Association. I'm the vice president. Our president is present in your room, who will speak to the community association.
Thank you. The next resident, Ryan Lee. Could remotely, I believe.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. My name is Ryan Lee. We own the house that would be directly at the end of the driveway on the east side of the proposed development. That's one thing that we think is going to have some impact on us. These cars coming in all hours of the night. This is our living space back here. It's kind of our private side of the house, and so having lights coming in all the time, it's a bit of a problem, or we see it as a problem. On top of all the loss of the privacy and shade and all that kind of stuff that we're looking at with this development, my real issue is the way that the developer has approached the community. It's been this kind of one-handed, we're all in this together and we want to do this and help you out. But really, like, whenever we ask for plans or drawings or so we could get actual details that we could make, you know, some informed decisions on, that stuff just wasn't forthcoming until you know, it was to be submitted to the city. And the story changed from the beginning to the end, right? At first it was, these were going to be private owned and potentially we could even invest in them. But it seems to me that this is a private development by a corporation for profit that wants to take this lot and split it up into 4 individual lots, which would be something if those conveyances were then to be sold on to individual properties or freeholds. But it really seems that they're being split up only for the purpose of this corporation to own all these properties together and control them as rental properties. And as Mr. Blum has said, you know, if they were to be sold, they would be sold in a unit. And it seems to me that this is an attempt to get around the zoning requirements for an R2 property rather than ask for a rezoning permit for whatever reason. And you know, it seems to me that this is because this is for the corporation's interest and not the interest, truly of the interest of the neighbors in the neighborhood. We do understand as neighbors, you know, we do have a community in our little subdivision here. We do understand that this property is likely to be developed. But perhaps this development is not the right one. And if this development is to proceed in this manner, we think that it should be, I agree with the city that it should be done probably through a rezoning application to R3. Now, I'm no expert, but that's, you know, that's the general consensus that we feel from the neighbors. So I just wanted to have that spoken on behalf of my mother.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Take care.
Thank you. The next speaker is Adriana Viari and Nanan Bebek, either remotely or in person. Oh, they're here. Thank you. Sorry, it's Andrea. Sorry, not Adriana. Sorry, Andrea. Please join us if you'd like.
Oh,
yeah, please join us. Thank you. Yes, you have 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chair, my name is Nana Babic. I live in a unit that is facing the back of the property, current one. And
your civic address, please?
Oh, it's 306 Woodruff Avenue, Unit 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, our concerns are about the backyards and that will be significantly changed. So we don't believe those are minor variances if you change something for almost 70%. And so in our case, they're changing something from 18.75 meters to mere 6 meters. And not only that, but we will be facing our bedroom, dining room, and living room will be facing the entrance to that building. And that building itself, from what I understand, will be rental one subdivided into 2 units. So potentially 8 people will be coming in and out, and I wouldn't be able to, doesn't matter an amount of shrubs and anything posted there. I see similar backdrops for the other neighbors, like they were significantly reduced, not just minor. What mostly disturbs me is this is not for bringing families to the neighborhood where we will have family with kids and so on, but it's actually built purposely for making money. And corporation is, it looks like, trying to subdivide this only for the purpose of getting around the bylaws that are there to protect people like myself and my neighbors, which I actually like. I don't mind having neighbors there, but there is a right way to do that. There is a difference between intensification, and overcrowding. So this looks to me built for the purpose of maximizing profit, where, as we calculated, a total of 64 people can live in that property if it's subdivided the way they wanted, which is two semis with 2 each. Let's say that family of 4 lives in those 64 people, 8 cars. And where will be the visitors? And where will the water come from when that snow melts? And they will be coming in and out. There will be significant noise and significant the buildings themselves will block lots of light. And so there is, I believe, right way, and this project doesn't look right for this property.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Mr. Baltz? No? Ms. Wright?
Perhaps just clarify for maybe all of us that units 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 would only have 2 units in each building, correct? It's not, so it's only unit 1 and 2 that have the 2 primary and the 2 secondary.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nope.
Can I add that?
Yes, supplemental, yes, please.
Yes. There is nothing, in my understanding, based on current plan, there is nothing prevent whoever is the owner of those buildings to change that in very easy way. And so it's like, maybe it's not planned right now, but tomorrow by noon it can change, right? And the other thing is that it was built purposely for renting, so there will be never family moving in and owning just one of the duplexes, because they have to own whole lot. And then what then? It has to be further subdivided and so on. And loss of privacy and everything is great for not just myself, but from what I hear from other neighbors as well.
Would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, I went to great lengths to explain this proposal to the neighbors. I find a lot of what I've said has now been turned into negative comments bordering on character assassination. We're providing 3-bedroom units for families. 4 people cannot live in a 1-bedroom basement apartment. I actually sent a follow-up email, which they have never mentioned, saying that we don't anticipate being anywhere close. We estimate 25 to 30 people living here. Building across the street is potentially could be a 5-bedroom. In the long run, I have it rented to 3 people. It's a professional couple, and the reason I rented to them is because they're osteopaths. They can help people in the neighborhood. I'm being accused of being profiteering off of this. After 40 years as an architect, I finally found a way to provide rentals in a neighborhood that I love. Any money that I make from this, and I didn't mention this, I co-founded a shelter for homeless kids in Ottawa 10 years ago. My company now exists to expand that shelter across Canada. It's not my money. So you can accuse me of profiteering, of being a professional developer. I have made a choice to put people first and then find a way to make it feasible.
Great, thank you for your comments. Just going to move to the next speaker, please. Thank you. Oh, yes. Andrea?
Hi,
Hi
I'm
there.
Andrea Vieira, and I also live at 306 Woodruff Avenue, Unit 2. I'd just like to reiterate the comments for my neighbor, Brian, and my husband, Renan. I don't agree with this development. I think the project, the way it's going around, it's trying to circumvent the bylaw by using the mechanism of minor variances when they're reducing setbacks for several rear backyards by between 50 to 70%. So this is definitely not the appropriate mechanism, and that there will be too many people in that space. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. We'll call on the next speaker, please.
Could we address some of those comments that have been just made?
You'll have last
Okay.
to say. The next speaker, please, is Sue Wilburn Hopwood, who's the president of the Wood Park Community Association. Welcome.
Get the microphone going. Hi, I'm Sue Milburn Hopwood, and I live at 440 Wentworth Avenue in Wood Park. And I'm the president of the Wood Park Community Association. As you've heard in Michael's comments, Michael is the developer of this project, but he's also lives in Wood Park and is an active member of our association. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that was the situation. He provided his presentation on this proposal at our May meeting, but he was not involved in any of the discussions about our views on the proposal, and he certainly didn't influence the remarks that I'm making this afternoon. So just want to put that out there, but it has not impacted how the board has treated this proposal. So with 2 LRT stations being built in our neighborhood, our community is anticipating significant intensification. There's a strong desire that this intensification be well planned to ensure the Wood Park remains a safe and livable community. And while we recognize the work underway to develop the new bylaws to implement the gentle intensification envisioned in the official plan and the More Homes Built Faster Act, try to say that fast, we are deeply concerned that the City of Ottawa is not investing in the creation of plans to guide development in the communities, particularly the ones such as ours, that are going to see huge increases in population density. So that's a concern. I know it's outside of the mandate, but maybe you can do something in terms of talking about the need for some advanced planning rather than having it all done at this table. So when our board reviewed the proposal last May, most of the board members thought the proposal to be innovative and well thought out and providing that much needed housing for families. And quite frankly, I live in a small 3-bedroom house and I raised a family. You don't have to have a big house to raise a family, but you do need some bedrooms. We like the features such as the permeable pavement and the energy efficient design and construction. And we also like the fact that the street character would largely be maintained. So after our discussion, I sent a letter to the developer indicating that the board didn't have any objections to the proposal. So when we heard that the variance and severance applications were coming to this committee, we decided to ask our community for their views on the proposal. We put a post on our website. It was viewed 400 times and about 20 people took the time to provide comments to the association. I didn't hear from any of the people who have just spoken the last minute. I don't know those people. I wasn't aware of their concerns here. They did not go through the community association to express their concerns. We also received some other comments directly to the association's email. So my context is on what I received through a Facebook post, the association's post, its blog, and then just the comments that came in. So most of the comments that we received recognize that intensification is coming, and they were supportive of this proposal. Some of the residents in particular expressed that they were happy to see the smaller homes instead of the large, expensive, big single family or semi homes that we've been seeing in recent years. There were some questions about whether our existing sewer and water infrastructure was sufficient to handle this and the other developments that will come. And we know that Ancaster Avenue has had some concerns related to water and water pressure. So that's something that we really think needs to be looked at. There was some concern about the loss of green space and drainage area, given that there's going to be 4 new buildings and a shared driveway on this site, and want to make sure that it's not going to increase the local flooding risk. There was some objections about the front yard parking, but more from the precedent that it would set as opposed to this situation. I think there were some residents that question whether it's really realistic to think that families would only have 1 car. many of the infills around our neighborhood, not in our neighborhood. This is not the case, and there are clearly parking issues. The city is going to need to control parking as the density increases in our neighborhood and elsewhere, especially in neighborhoods like ours where they're near an LRT station and people might drive to that community park and then hop on the LRT. Can I go a little bit longer?
Yes, continue, please. Thank you.
Okay. In summary, while there are some concerns expressed, there is general support amongst the Wood Park community, perhaps not the people that spoke here for this proposed development. These are the people that wrote in, but they haven't taken the time to be here. So the Wood Park Community Association recommends that if the panel does decide to approve the variances in separate applications, it do so with the following conditions: that there be a stormwater management plan developed and approved by the city planning staff, that there be an assessment of the adequacy of the city's water supply and sewage system to handle the increased load, and again that be found adequate by the city staff. And then finally, that the panel call on the city to initiate work to develop a plan for Wood Park in collaboration with the residents to guide future development and address issues such as street parking, road safety, green space, trees, recreational facilities. So I think generally the association is comfortable with this, but wants to ensure that those things are addressed. So I've heard the discussion today, and particularly recommendations to the city planners about the mechanism of do this. I do hope that the Committee of Adjustments does give serious consideration to approving the development with the conditions that we've outlined here. Yes, the developer has taken an unusual approach here, but this is an unusual lot, both in its size and its orientation and its shape. And so I think that calls for an unusual approach. I don't think the city is interested in having, I know the city is interested, the community, sorry, the community is not interested in seeing a large apartment style building on this site. And I think if we went to rezoning, that could happen. You know, that's a bit of the concern about rezoning. It's not this proponent, would be another proponent that this could happen under. Anyhow, the Wood Park community recognizes that this neighborhood will change, but it wants it to ensure that with the changes, the existing character remains. And I believe this proposal will keep that existing character. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. To the panel, do you have any questions? Mr. Baltz?
Just actually to staff, the conditions that were mentioned, the need to plan for future development is you should go through your counselor for that, because that's a council, we're arm's length. But for the other two, the stormwater management plan and the adequacy of the city water supply, are there conditions in this already for that, or are new conditions needed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the conditions imposed on a typical consent application are for a servicing plan and grading and drainage. That type of condition, like stormwater management report, would be something that would be required when an applicant makes the zoning bylaw amendment request. So again, if this were to go through rezoning, that would be something that we would have requested to see about the adequacy of the services in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So back to the applicant for final comment.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll address some of the comments that have come about through the neighbors. And as the representative of the community association said, this is a very unusually shaped lot. So we've tried to come up with an innovative solution for that. So there needs to be obviously variances to reflect the shape and size of the lot. There was a comment made about and they gave a percentage of a 70-something% modification to the rear yard setback. The calculated value should be about 18.75 meters, and we're going to 6 meters. That is only because of the depth of the lot as calculated going from the front of the property on Ancaster to the far rear lot line. All of the rear yard setbacks are the same at 6 meters, which is a compliant setback for the lot that is closest to the street. So and that's the reason that we need to get variable rear yard setback variances. There was a question about crowding and that this could result in 64 people. The intent is to have 4 buildings, of which 3 would be standard semis, and then 1 that would be a semi with an SDU. So that is a real stretch to imagine that 64 people would be in that number of buildings. And there are no, as far as I'm aware, there's really not any limitation on the number of people, but sure, just the size of the buildings and the fact that only 1 of the 4 buildings would have SDUs significantly reduces that number down. There was also a question about there was comments from the community association about adequacy of servicing, and as Ms. Solak indicated, during a standard clearing of conditions, there is a requirement to do a site servicing and site grading plan that needs to be to the satisfaction of the head of building code services or the infrastructure group. So that there's back and forth between ourselves and our client civil engineer and the city's grading and civil engineering review people before that gets signed off on. Our client civil engineer has been in extensive discussions with one particular project manager in the infrastructure group, and they've had some very good dialogue. And the civil engineer has sent a letter to Mr. Broom. We just got it earlier this afternoon. I forwarded it to the committee's email address. And it's indicating that based on preliminary water demands and flow rates, the proposed services are adequately sized for the proposed subject development, and sufficient access and clearances have been provided to repair and maintain the services. They've discussed the servicing of this proposed development with Justin Armstrong, the PNG project manager at the city, and he stated that he generally agrees with the approach we are taking with respect to servicing, subject to the review or approval of the details, and subject to the ownership of the lands in which the services will be located. So that has been sent in the last hour or so to the main committee email address. We just got it today. So there has been extensive discussions between our client civil engineer and the city's infrastructure people, and they have been involved in the meetings that we've had to date. We've had a number of meetings with the city planners. We've gone through, I believe, 3 and now 4 committee planners at the reporting level, and then I think 3 of a managerial level. So there's been a lot of dialogue, and the civil engineer has been involved in quite a few of those. And there's also been side discussions by our client's civil engineer and the reviewing civil engineer at the city. And I believe
just one comment to address some of the community comments we've heard today. An obvious point, but I just want to state for the record that the type of tenure, whether it's ownership or rental, is not actually a planning consideration. It's called people zoning. We can't zone or make land use planning decisions based on who may or may not be an occupant. So I just wanted to state that for the record. And now I think Mr. Broom has some final comments. Are you done?
I'm not done. Okay, thank you again to the committee. I guess first I'll address the comments from the townhouses behind. We had a very difficult time setting up meetings with them because there were four different townhouses, 4 different people. I understand they have busy lives. Just as an example of how the comments got turned around, at the end of one of the meetings, I said to them, we're planting 3 trees on our side of the property. If you would like to consider, we could plant one on your side of the fence as well, if you're in your backyard, if you'd like one. That got turned into a comment that I want them to do the landscaping on my behalf. That was never the intention. And that's just reflective of all the comments that are in their letters. Yeah, the servicing of the site, as he said, has been dealt with the civil engineer, with the city's civil engineer, the ongoing dialogue. That was the first thing we said, was if we can't service this property, it stops right here. We're not going any further. Based on what I was told, it was serviceable. I have been asking the city since November of last year, show me the specific clauses that relate to lot frontage and long semi-detached units that I don't comply with. In response, they said, if you're not going to do a rezoning, we don't want to talk to you, essentially. We were told, we just won't respond to your requests. We asked to meet with the city arborist to review the trees. We did meet with one city arborist. We were then passed over to another city arborist, and we had to go through the whole process again. Everything we had agreed with the first arborist was questioned by the second arborist. It's been a long journey. I'm trying to give back to the community, but I'm accused of a lot of things that, quite frankly, aren't fair or valid. I think this is an innovative approach to infill. I think we can do something to not make people feel so isolated. Like I said, everything on this site plan is there with intent. It's not just there. And the last thing I look at is, how do I make money at this? I try to give back, I try to solve problems, and then is there a way to make it feasible? The only way I could make it feasible in providing rental housing was not having to spend 2 years getting approvals at the City of Ottawa in a broken system.
Thank you for your comments. So we are going to reserve our decision today, and you'll be notified of the decision in writing in 10 days.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a minor variance application for 1558 Baseline Road. Mr. Hume. Welcome.
Very glad to be here, actually. So, and if you were to ask me how long a rezoning, plan of condominium, and site plan takes, I think he was being generous at 2 years. You're looking really at a 3-year window if you take that approach. So it's a very long and arduous process to get to building permit. But
on your item regarding 2 new variances, do you have any comments?
Well, I do have
a short presentation as well.
I do have a short presentation if you
thank you.
If you want it. So I'm happy to walk you through the proposal. This is on Baseline Road, which is a major transit corridor in the new official plan. As you can see there, the front and rear rendering, it is a corner lot at the corner of Baseline and Pender. And if you want to go to the second slide, so this was a lot that was originally created by the committee the last committee. And it was the original building envelope that was contemplated at the time was a long semi-detached building envelope. Unfortunately, when we came to design the proposal, what happened was, in talking with city staff, everyone came to the realization that although the lot was created with a long semi-detached in mind, long semi-detached are not allowed on corner lots. So you can't create a long semi-detached on the property. So as a result, the new building that was originally proposed was, so the new building format was just a standard semi-detached, which in the zone required means that although you would bring forward a long semi-detached, which would conform to all of the lot characteristics. When you move to a semi-detached, and it's kind of an awkward on a corner lot, long semis, the two units, it's not permitted, but you can conform. But when you go to a semi-detached, you need performance standard variances. So in this case, what we needed was in two areas. We wanted to create enough space to create a rear yard. So actually, we made the building. We tried to accommodate the building on the lot, and originally we had a tree agreement. So we were moving the building forward. We were making it a little wider and a little taller. We found out that the city will be interested sometime in the future of taking land through expropriation for the baseline bus transit way. So we agreed with the city and we moved the building back. So the building now meets the front yard setback. So we now no longer need that front yard setback. So, however, when you start to orient a building on the lot, the two property lines aren't actually square. So when you orient the building, the property line to the east gets quite small. The building is a little shifted, so you almost meet the side yard setback, the interior side yard setback here, but you don't meet it at the end, which is one of the variances that we're looking for. So if you want to go, but the big variances here are the side yard, the exterior side yard variance, and the height variance. So if you want to go to the next slide, which will give you a really interesting perspective. If you look at a standard side yard setback and rear yard, you'll usually look for 4.5 meters. So you're 4.5 meters off of the street, but you can go to 1.2 meters of the rear lot line, and you create that interior courtyard, which is identified in the orange. However, in discussions with the community association, there was a desire to try to create a parking space. As a result, we've opted not to take that building form. So we pulled the building back and we moved it a little forward. So it has more of a standard look of you would see on an interior lot. You have a standard rear yard. And in order to compensate for that standard rear yard, we have a little bit of a reduced side yard, but nothing particularly substantial in that regard. The side yard, the two side yard actually provides enough soil volume and to plant two large caliper trees, as does the rear yard. And I'll just go to the last variance before we meet the four tests, and that's the one on height. So we're proposing a slightly higher height. If you go to the next slide, which is 10.93 meters is the height that we're requesting. The official plan in section 4.6 gives you some really good guidance as to what is an appropriate transition, because on Baseline Road, the official plan gives you some indication that higher heights are possible, subject to an appropriate transition, and they provide the 45-degree angular plane and its impact as an indicator of whether it's appropriate or not. Now, in this regard, we have the rear yard property has an easement in between it, a hydro easement. So when you look to the back property of the next lot line at the bottom, you can see on the right that the building just in one of its flashings pierces that 45-degree angular plane. But if you were to stand at that back lot line, you would see that the building is quite underneath that angular plane, which gives you the indication of an appropriate transition when you apply the official plan variances. So those in a nutshell are the requested variances. We meet the four tests in that the requested variances are slight adjustments. They don't have impact on adjacent properties, and they maintain yards that are suitable for large-scale tree planting. This property is on the baseline rapid transit system, so a development in this area is desirable and appropriate in that it allows construction of a residential dwelling. The general intent of the zoning bylaw is maintained. Semi-detached units are permitted in the R2F zone, and the general intent of the zoning bylaw is not compromised by any of the proposed variants, and the general intent and purpose of the official plan is maintained. The site is designated as involving neighborhood, and I would probably tell you that the construction of a semi-detached unit is probably a little under what the expectation of the official plan would be. But in this case, in the context of its next door neighbor, which is a semi-detached, the proposed development would be considered consistent with the intent of the official plan.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel?
So the transportation raised an issue of a porch.
Yes.
That goes into the planned road widening, but can you just confirm that none of your variances are related to the porch?
Exactly. None of the variances are related to the porch, and the appropriate mechanism to deal with that type of comment would be for the city to initiate expropriation of the land, which is what they're going to have to do in order to acquire the property. I should note that when the consent was granted just a year ago and perfected a year ago, land was conveyed to the city for a road widening. So we've indicated to the city that should they come forward, we won't oppose expropriation, but none of our variances are required or deal with that front yard impact.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, sorry, comment from planning staff, please.
For you, Mr. Chair, staff have no concerns with the application. Staff believe that the reduced lot areas still provide enough room for the function of the development. The reduced side yard setback still provides enough space for a walkway to access secondary dwelling unit. Similar, the reduced corner side yard setback still provides enough distance between the street and the home, and there is enough room to provide landscaping. And for the height, staff has no concerns, given that there's a proper or adequate transition toward low rising at the back.
Thank you so much. Now, is Allison Clark joining us today, or? Oh, okay, thank you. Nancy Wilson and Jill Prott, remote, I would assume. They're joining us shortly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Hi. There, I don't know. Anyway, I'm Nancy Wilson from 16 Withrow Avenue. I'm the co-president of the City View Community Association. And I'd just like to again say hello to all of you new members. And we wanted to also tell Mr. Hume that we really do appreciate his talking to us about these developments before we come to Committee of Adjustment. We still do have a few comments. Most of the community of adjustment applications for City View Ryan Farm involve R1 zoning, which we are confident working with. We're not as familiar with the R2 zoning, so we are leaving it up to the planner to make sure that those guidelines are followed. We understand that there's now 5 variances, and again, we appreciate that the applicant contacted us to update us on these revisions. As Baseline Road is an arterial corridor and identified as an evolving area in the new OP, we agree that it is appropriate intensification for this location on the periphery of our community. But the City View Community Association is the opinion that one of the 4 tests has not been met. These variances are not desirable for the appropriate development or use of the property because of the lack of parking. To allow a single parking space for 4 new units is unacceptable. This severed lot currently serves as parking space for the adjacent building at 1560 Baseline Road. In some of the pictures that you've seen, there is cars parked there, and they're there all the time. There's usually 4 vehicles that are there. So once this building is built, they'll have to go to the street or into their little tiny spot, 2 spots on the front of the building off the Baseline. As of this week, this lot is still used for parking for the adjacent lot at 1560 Baseline Road. And there's no on-street parking permitted on Baseline Road or the first block of Pender near the intersection. So that is going to force them into the community. The existing duplex with 4 units lacks sufficient parking for its tenants. Yet this proposed semi is offering a single space for all 4 in the back, which Mr. Hume is at least giving us that, but we don't think that's enough. It is unacceptable to allow additional overflow long-term parking on surrounding streets. This would be a major safety issue for our residents as City View streets are narrow and lack sidewalks and curbs. It's unfortunate this building footprint could not be reduced in size to allow additional parking and more soft landscaping for its occupants. However, we are glad to see that the building has been moved back from Baseline Road. And just in closing, we understand that the city now requires a condition on City View lots that developers must reconstruct ditches and culverts under the driveways due to our drainage issues. So we just wanted to make sure that that condition is in there. And other than that, we wish Mr. Hume good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any questions of the Mrs. Wilson? Ms. Wilson? No? Is Jill Pratt going to join us, Ms. Wilson?
I don't think she has. I think I've covered everything. So unless she pops in the next second, I don't think she has any more to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Hume, would you like to speak to the matter?
Yeah, so the parking issue, the proposal is compliant with the city's requirements for parking. She is correct that the lot is people are going to have to leave the land, that's not really a lot, and park in their own driveways. They do have 2 standard parking spaces for the adjacent property with approved private approaches where they're going to have to park. This development, we're providing parking. We think there's probably enough space to put an additional parking space, but we didn't want to, we'll look at that. We didn't want to do that because we thought it might compromise some of our ability to plant a tree in the back corner. And we felt that replacing that tree was more important. It is compliant with the city's zoning bylaw with respect to parking and is consistent with the city's direction with regarding active transportation and its proximity to the upcoming Baseline BRT system. So, we're a little bit caught here between a community who's concerned about parking and a city and an official plan that is telling you minimize or eliminate parking is their preference. So we're trying to find that middle ground. We're providing a parking space here. The lot next door has 2 parking spaces. So that is where we think the balance lies.
Thank you for your comments. So, as you know, we'll be reserving this decision, and you'll be receiving in writing a written decision in 10 days.
Question on procedure, Mr. Chairman. The last time I was here, I asked if the committee would be able to vary the variances, one of the variances requested. And at the time, the chair said, you know, that wasn't possible. And I wonder if the committee has they're allowed to vary variances, but does the city have a criteria upon which it uses to determine when and when it won't vary a variance on the floor? So it'd be very helpful for some of us who, you know, who might require that. And secondly, is there a criteria on which you base your decision to reserve? Is it because some decisions today were done by a vote and some are being reserved? And it would just be helpful to know so that we can advise our owners it's going to be reserved. You know, there's someone who's going to speak against it, and when someone speaks against it or has a concern, it's always going to be reserved. So it'd be very helpful if you could provide some guidance on those two matters.
Yes, with regards to there was one item today that was fast-tracked because there was no one in opposition, and all the other items were held in reserve by the committee. And so given the, given the reasons that we of time, as well as we just try to, we'll have a chance to review these decisions and then get back to that's the process we're using, reserve decisions. Thank you. And I think that's all for today. Thank you very much, panel and staff and committee chair.